Hi, you are live with Lila and
I'm Nir Eyal.
yes, you are. Hi.
Last time I checked.
Yeah. We're like, wait, it's so hard to remember our own identity during these times, isn't
Let
it?
alone what day of the week it is, right?
Oh, I haven't known what day of the week it is for years.
I just saw this article about how there's this trend on Google, like the term, what day is it, is like a trending topic right now. It's like they've never seen so much traffic for that search term.
Right. Yeah, I can imagine because now everybody's living the way I usually do, which is, I work for myself with Say Things Better. So it's a 7-day a week kind of thing.
Yeah.
I'll work for whoever, whenever, as long as, because I don't have, my family or kids like you do. I don't really have a lot of calls to my attention except for the work that I love doing and my friends.
Yeah, well, I'm not in that different of a situation. So I've been working from home for the past 5 years and homeschooling our daughter. So this is not too different from our normal routine as well.
How old is she now?
She's 11.
Oh, she's 11. Wow. That's an interesting age to be kind of stuck with your parents for
Yeah,
weeks at a time.
it's not that different from
I guess
how
she
we
likes you
homeschooled
though.
for years. Yeah, I mean, she doesn't like the fact that she can't go out, and we're restricted from some things, but in general, it's not too different from
Yeah,
our
she
regular
understands.
life.
She's old enough to understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she likes you. I listened to Indistractable, your book, when I was out for walks. I started taking these like 10-mile walks just to escape the apartment and go somewhere else. So I was listening to Indistractable and the parenting section where you really gave her the permission to set her own rules based on her values. I thought was so beautiful.
Thank
Just
you. I really
for people
appreciate it.
in general. And I
That
don't
was
have kids, so I was like, oh, I'm not going to relate to anything here. But then I called that out for myself.
I really appreciate that. That means a lot to me. I've heard a lot of people who don't have kids just skip that chapter, but that means a lot to me that you
I
listen
had
to it.
made it. Yeah, I had made a
I learned
commitment.
the most actually writing that section because
Really?
yeah, because I didn't realize how important these what we call psychological nutrients that come from self-determination theory, which is the widest, most accepted theory of human motivation. It's it's a 40-year-old theory that basically says that every human being on the face of the earth needs these three things for psychological well-being: competency, autonomy, and relatedness. And what I tried to do was to relate it to explain the deeper reason why kids look for distraction. Why are they constantly using their devices? It's not just about the device. It's about these deeper psychological needs that these devices address. So it's called the needs displacement hypothesis, that when we're not getting things in the offline world, we look for them in the virtual world.
Yeah, I actually responded to that as a person. I'm very often on social media. I have a following on LinkedIn of thousands of people who look for me to say, hey, you're valuable, you're valuable, you're valuable, you're valuable. And then what I ended up doing, at least in the last couple of years, was looking for these relationships in my life from people who didn't really provide all that much, or didn't want all that much of me, didn't value me all that greatly. And I was like, well, that's okay because I have all these other dopamine hits that can fill in those blanks. So the chapter might have been for children, but we're all still children. We just got older.
And the three psychological nutrients are for everyone on the face of the earth, not just kids. You're absolutely right. And it absolutely applies.
I took a 2-week detox, from social media after spending 1,000 or more, maybe it was like 1,150 or something consecutive days on LinkedIn.
Oh, wow. Okay. How'd that work out?
It was fine. Yeah. I mean, I was looking for some kind of earth-shattering, life-shifting realization.
Yeah.
I guess what I found was like, I'm fine.
Yeah.
I have these other relationships. I was talking to people on the phone. And then I went back to it, but not the same.
I like to say that social media is a supplement to social interactions, that it's not a bad thing. It's like it's just like a vitamin is a supplement, right? Real food is necessary. You can't live on vitamin pills. So, but as a supplement, it's fantastic, right? If you have people in your life that you can't be physically with, especially now that we're on
Yeah.
lockdown, oh my God, what would we do without these amazing technologies? So I think it's a wonderful supplement, but it's not a replacement for real world interactions.
It's not. Although I met a lot of people through social media for the first time, and then we get, increasingly more offline as the relationship grows.
Which is wonderful. I mean, that's why I'm not anti-tech in the least. I love tech, especially now with this lockdown. Can you imagine how difficult this would be? It's difficult enough. Can you imagine if we didn't have these technology tools?
It'd be really lonely. I mean, for me, I'm a real true extrovert. So I'm like, people.
Yeah, exactly. It'd be really miserable without these tools. So it's really about how we use these things. I don't agree with, many of these academic elitists who don't even have a social media account telling people stop using social media, stop checking email. Well, that's easy for you to say.
Right.
Our livelihoods depend on it. How can you just stop using it? It's really about using it properly.
Those people don't value it. When you say like they don't have a social media account, then how can you judge somebody else's use of something that reflects their values?
And frankly, even if we stopped using it, let's say tomorrow Zuckerberg says, okay, you know what? I'm rich enough. I'm shutting off Facebook. Okay. I'm turning out the lights. Facebook's gone. Mm-hmm. Okay. You really think people are going to start reading Shakespeare and Chaucer in their spare time? Of course not. We're going to do the same thing we've always done. Distraction wasn't invented with the iPhone and Facebook. Distraction has been around at least since the time of Plato. I researched this, when I started researching my book. Mm-hmm. One of the first things I was amazed to find, I was looking for, when did distraction start? Did it start in 2008 with the App Store? Did it start in, the 2000s with the tech boom? It started with Plato 2,500 years ago. He was talking about how distracting the world was, 2,500 years ago.
Plato, like the philosopher.
Yes, exactly.
I'm thinking of Play-Doh.
Oh, not that
like which is like very distracting. Like, because now I'm like, I really wish I had some Play-Doh here. I would make a little man. I'd be like, this is my little Nir. He's going to eat Oreos in the kitchen, which I know are something, because I listened to your book. It was like one of those nuggets that you shared, a little personal thing that you just like Oreo cookies, and you had to make an effort pact to put them away from where you would reach for them.
Yes, I do have a passion for Oreos. And it's interesting because there's, I used to be clinically obese, and there's so many parallels between the same exact reaction that we have to overeating. We have similar psychology underlying why we overconsume information or distraction for that matter. I mean, distraction fundamentally, back to what Plato said. Plato called it akrasia in the Greek, which means the tendency to do things against our better interest. So whether it's too much booze, too much news, too much food, whatever it might be, we look for an escape from our own heads when our own heads aren't a very comfortable place to be. And so the problem, the root cause of the problem is never what's in our hands or on our screens. It's always about something going on inside of us. And if we don't deal with that first, if we don't realize that time management is pain management, then no time management technique is going to work. That has to be the first place to start.
It has to be. I mean, if you don't have the self-awareness to know what's going on inside of you, how can you make any changes?
Right.
And
exactly.
So looking at that pain, looking inside myself. So I went through Indistractable. I went through and I took every piece of your advice one at a time to just see what would change. I changed my phone home screen, which used to have over 100,000 unread email notifications.
Oh my gosh. That is giving me hives just thinking of it.
My phone is over there because I'm Indistractable at the moment, or I would show it to you. But I did take a screenshot and I put it on Instagram and tagged you, which is how we started talking. I was like, I did this thing where I moved everything that wasn't the person I really want to be and what that person wants to achieve off of my first home screen on my phone. And some apps I moved 2 swipe screens over to make that effort pact. And actually, that's really worked. I took most games off my phone, and then I put one back on because I need it to de-stress. And I remembered what you said was like, if it's helping you, keep it. Just be aware that you're using it.
Yeah.
Give
myself use it on your schedule.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you want to, there's nothing wrong with playing Candy Crush or watching Netflix or whatever it is you want to do. Why is somebody watching football any morally superior than someone hanging out on Facebook? There's nothing morally
Oh, I could answer that
inferior.
question.
What's that?
I mean, I said I could answer that question. I mean, there are so many life lessons from, from football and from sports in general. But
Well,
somebody on
a lot
Facebook,
of
they
stuff
exist
done
as well.
on Facebook as well, right? So it's really about
how
how
what you
we
want to
use
learn
those.
and from whom.
Yeah, it's really about, do we use it on our schedule or are we slaves to the tech company's schedule, right? So if you plan that time to say, look, you know what, after work, this is what's in my schedule. I come home from work and for 30 minutes, I want to play a video game. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that, as long as it's done on your schedule with intent versus doing it as an escape. It's something that you plan to do. Now, distraction is very different from diversion, right? A diversion is just a refocusing of attention. And you can choose what you want to refocus your attention on. And if you want to focus your attention on a video game, fantastic. But it's not a distraction. What's that?
Vanderpump Rules, all those Bravo TV shows. I watch.
Sure. Yeah, go for it.
Married at First Sight, The Bachelor.
And you can turn that stuff into traction by deciding when you want to do that. So if it's on your calendar, I'm not sure if you adopted that technique of a time-bound calendar, but if it's on your calendar and that's what you plan to do, well, now that is traction. And in fact, anything else, right? Checking email or doing work or being productive is now the distraction.
It's not. Yeah. Well, it's my reward. So I don't want to dilute my reward or else the incentive won't be as strong. So I use bundles. So I've got my, something that I enjoy doing, listening to these audiobooks. And I'm bundling it with something that I don't really like, which is exercise. And I'll say, I can get back to this book the next time I go out for a walk, the next time I go walking. And so I can't listen to it until that happens. And so it's something I look forward to. I've ended up listening to more audiobooks and getting more exercise. So I've had some personal, real life realizations as a result of reading and going through and listening to your advice in your book. I'm not perfect at anything, but this is life and it goes on. And so I wanted to ask you, because people assume that the people who speak as experts about something are the best, are perfect, and are unimpeachable in any way. I speak about communication. So I know that couldn't be further from the truth. I'm, many times a terrible communicator, make people feel awful because I forget to set my intentions still, even though what I talk about is intentional communication. And so I was wondering about you, you speak about distraction and also about the persuasion, that call. And, you also wrote the book Hooked about how we actually are designed and how that design is working against us for all of these video game industries and, commercials and everything that pulls at our attention. Designed to do that. So are you perfect now? Have you got it? Or
well,
where does it falter?
I want to take issue with what you said earlier, that you're not perfect. I actually think that you are perfect.
Well, you're right. That's true. I am.
because look,
let's go with that.
I made up the word indistractable. It's not a real word. I made it up. And so I get to define it any way I want.
Yeah.
So the definition of being indistractable is not that you never get distracted. That's not the definition of being indistractable. The definition of being indistractable, as I say in the book, is that you are the kind of person who strives to do what they say they're going to do. That does not mean you never get distracted. You strive to do what you say you're going to do. You are the kind of person who lives with personal integrity. Now, all of us get distracted from time to time. I still get distracted from time to time. The difference is that someone who is indistractable has the information, has the knowledge, has the awareness to know why they got distracted so that they don't keep getting distracted from the same thing again and again. There's a wonderful Paulo Coelho quote, and he says that a mistake repeated more than once is a decision. So most people decide to be distractible, right? And they think it's a character flaw. They think there's something wrong with them. No, there's nothing wrong with them. It's just that they haven't made the changes in their life to be indistractable. They keep making the same mistakes again and again and again. So that's the difference. If the distraction keeps getting you and you do nothing about it, that's when it's a problem, right? That's when
you're not. It's a lot of work, though, to get that awareness.
Exactly. And to do something about it, to realize
if you're conscious about something.
Right, right.
Uh,
To understand that distractions only have three potential sources: an internal trigger, an
mhm,
external trigger, or a planning problem. And once
mhm.
you know that, you can do something about it. And as for me, look, my friend Gretchen Rubin says that research is me search. I wrote this book for me, right? More than anyone
Yeah,
else. If
yeah.
anybody else reads it, that's icing on the cake. That's awesome. I didn't write it for the reader. I wrote it for the writer because
And that's
I
why I do
needed
this show.
what's
I
that?
wanted to do this show because these are conversations I wanted to have.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I have a following of people who are interested in being a fly on the wall for those conversations. Great. But like I'm talking to people that I'm really interested in having conversations with. I'm
yeah.
asking things that I'm curious about because it's the strongest voice, I think, are the things that you wonder about, your own questions. That's the strongest your voice is because you know that a question at least originated in your own mind.
Right, right. And so
You
that
know
was
that the
that was really for
uncertainty
me.
is yours.
And my process for when I have a question is, I'll spend some time on it. I'll try and work through it. If I can't find the answers, then I'll read books about it. And when it came to this problem of distraction, I read every book I could find on the topic, and they
Yeah.
didn't fix it for me. I still had
No.
this problem.
I
And
read
so
all kinds of things.
yeah,
It
and so
really
that's why
was,
I had to write
yeah.
this book, was because I needed a system that actually worked for me, that was also based in good science. There's a
Mhm.
lot of books out there that fall into one of two categories: either super theoretical, all about the studies and not very practical, or somebody's pet technique that they say, oh, it works for me. I wake up every morning at 4 a.m. and I take a shower in freezing water. That totally works. Well, like, I need to see the studies,
It sounds
like,
terrible.
I want to see the research.
I'm not doing that. I don't care what research there is, how big of a benefit that will give you for your day. I'm
Right,
never doing that. I
right. Well,
promise.
I wanted
I'm
something
not
that was
getting in a freezing shower at 4 AM.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well,
So I wanted
when
something
you
that was
talked about going into yourself, like what the things so I know that you mentioned these in your book, but not everybody watching has read them yet. When you had these relationship moments with your daughter, it really caused you to reflect on yourself and see what were the internal needs that you had that were being replaced or were being filled with that time that you could have been spending focused on her. So what were those needs for you before when you were distractible?
yeah. So what were my internal triggers, right? Why
Yeah.
was I looking for escape when I was with
Mhm.
my daughter? It was a few things. It was the stress of work. It was the anxiety that someone might need me. It was,
Mhm.
frankly, the boredom of being with a toddler for too much time. I mean, I'll
Oh,
be
I'm sure
honest with
lots
you.
of people can relate to that right now.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes you need a break. But instead of taking it out on my daughter and giving her the message that whatever's on my screen is more important than she is, I could deal with it in a healthier manner. And so that's really
Mhm.
what it's about. It's about recognizing, is this serving me really here? Is my behavior traction or
Mhm.
distraction? And doing something to make sure that you can act according to your values.
So you talk about that, acting according to your values. And one of the things that you mentioned is that we should turn our values into time, which is almost the same thing that I talk about in communication with intention, which is I use something called verb your values. So
Hmm.
we're using an action word to describe our values in relation to our communication. So if it is my value to have love and connection, then it might be that I choose to connect or to affirm or to empower or whatever that is for me, how I connect with people or show love. That's a verb that I will assign to my communication. And it recognizes that our values can be more than just ideas, that they can be actions as well.
Hmm.
And communication is an action. It moves. It goes from here to there, and now it's moved. So it's what is the intention? What's the heat on that pitch that I decide to send? So when you say that you should turn your values into time, what is that? What is the action that why is it better to take an action on your values rather than to have them just sit in an idea in terms of getting things done?
Because it's nothing but lip service. If you say what your values are, but you don't act upon them, then why are they worth having? So I think the important place to start is by defining the term. What is a value? So a
Mhm.
value I define as an attribute of the person you want to become. So the question we need to ask ourselves when it comes to a time management perspective and a distraction perspective is, how would the person I want to become spend their time based on your values? And it's not up to me or anyone else to tell you what your values should be. But what I want to help you do is to live out those values so that you can do whatever it is you want to do with your time. So if your values include playing video games, great. I want you to do that. And I want you to do that without guilt, right? This is the problem, that so many people, even when they have the leisure time, they're still thinking about something else and they can't even enjoy the leisure time because they feel guilty about watching Netflix or playing a video game. And so the important thing here is to turn your values into time instead of, 5-year plans or vision boards, or define what your values are. That's really hard because it's so mushy. Instead, let's start with tomorrow. Let's start with tomorrow. What would tomorrow look like in the life of the person you want to become? Okay. Not when you retire, but in your current life. Given that we all have the same 24 hours in a day, how would the person you want to become spend their time? And so what we want to do is to look at these 3 life domains. We have in the center is you. If you can't take care of yourself, you can't take care of others. So what are your values when it comes to taking care of yourself? If health is important to you, do you have time on your schedule for proper rest, proper nutrition, proper exercise? Again, I'm not saying these should be your values, but if those are your values, are those things on your schedule, right? How many people tell their kids, you need to go to bed on time, but we don't go to bed on time, right? We're hypocrites.
Yeah.
Or we say, oh, we definitely should eat healthy, but we don't, right? Or we say we should exercise, but we don't. And so the question is, a big reason why we don't do it, it's called making an implementation intention, that we don't decide in advance when we will do what we say we're going to do. So the first step is just to look at tomorrow and to say, okay, how much time would the person I want to become spend on these various activities? I'm turning my values into time and actually time blocking those actions on my calendar, whether it's exercise or a bedtime or whatever it is. So that's in the you domain. The next domain is the relationship domain. So when it comes to our parents, our siblings, our friends, too many of us, we think, okay, we'll catch up sometime, right? How many times have you heard, oh, we should totally get coffee? Well,
and then weeks go by and I haven't called either of my parents. I had to confront that exact thing in myself when I was listening to your book. And I put it on my calendar. I texted my dad. I said, let's talk tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern. And he was like, really? And it just made me so sad that he was so surprised, that I had reached out, but that it really showed me that I've been failing my values, that those are things that are important to me. And then scheduling it made it I've taken an action. I've taken this seriously. These people mean something to me. And at the same time, my mental peace and ability to succeed means a lot to me. So I had to talk to him about what boundaries we set in those conversations so that I can look forward to them. So that it's not here are all the things that are going wrong in the world, And I value positivity and joy and fun. So
and a time constraint too.
Yeah. Right. I'll have to go in 20 minutes, but let's talk.
Absolutely. Because look, even that, right? You say, okay, well, talking to your father is such a positive, beautiful thing. And it is according to your values. But look, if you talk to your dad for 3 hours when you intended to talk to him for 20 minutes, now that's become a distraction too.
It would be great for him. He'd love that. Right. But I just cannot, I can't talk.
I hear you. And this is why this time boxing technique is so important, because it forces us to deal with constraints. This is why it's so important, because anybody can have highfalutin values, right? Oh, I totally value my family. I totally value my health. I totally value working hard. You can have infinite number of values and things you want to do, but unless you turn that into time and realize, wait a minute, talking to my dad for 3 hours takes time away from exercise, or talking to my other friends, or working on a big project, or whatever it might be. I have to balance how I spend my day. And so that's why the constraint of working with the same 24 hours that everyone on earth has is such an important technique. So that's the relationship domain. And I think it's really an overlooked area. I think, we know that in this country, we have an epidemic of loneliness.
Yeah.
that the rates of people saying that they feel lonely, the number of friends that they have has declined. And a big reason why this has happened is, and this isn't a new phenomenon, by the way, this didn't start with Facebook. This started back in the 1990s, at least. There was an author by the name of Robert Putnam who wrote a book called Bowling Alone. And he saw this phenomenon. And what he saw was that there's a decline in civic groups. So the bowling league, the Kiwanis Club, the church group, the groups that met on a set schedule. And when it comes to particularly millennials, we don't have that on our schedule. We know that millennials today are secularizing. Fewer people are going to church, synagogue, and the mosques. And so not that I'm an advocate necessarily for a religion, but what I'm saying is
for scheduled groups.
Exactly. We can replace that, if that's not something in our lives already, with regular interactions with the important people in our life. We can put that time on the books so that we say, you know what, you're my best friend. We're going to talk every Saturday at 6 p.m. Does that work? Let's just book it from now till forever. And if something comes up, then the default will be that we will meet. And if something comes up, then it's an exception to cancel.
Right.
But I want to spend 15 minutes with you just to see how you are real quick every week.
You've got your group of friends, right? That you guys meet. Is it once a month?
The kibbutz, every 2 weeks.
Every 2 weeks. Right. And so how are you doing that remotely right now?
So now we do it on Zoom.
You just do it on Zoom. Okay. Yeah, lots of people have been meeting on Zoom. Yeah, I think it's great that you are able to keep that commitment. You know that it's important to you, and you have these people that you always can rely on. Like, those relationships reflect your values, and so can things like masterminds or accountability groups serve the same kind of purpose in terms of civic grouping that church or synagogue or mosques might have provided. I think that we need that. I think that as humans, we need group structure, even if we're somebody who doesn't, somebody who's an introvert or really doesn't like being around lots of groups. There still is something to knowing that it's there, to the expectations that we all live within a certain moral code and hold each other accountable for that. And so moral code or action code, whatever it is. Since reading Indistractable, I signed up for Jake Jordan's 30 Days Accountable, which is an accountability group. And if I do not meet my goal of, and this is, one of those pain pacts, or price pact. If I don't meet my goal of getting my take feedback better up on like Teachable or Kajabi in the next couple of days, I have to go on this show on Live with Lila and publicly explain why I failed to make this happen.
Oh gosh.
what I prioritized above this. And Jake will be facilitating that conversation. And I really don't want to make anybody feel bad that I chose them above doing this course. But like, the fact is, I did a 154 person, 13-hour Shakespeare sonnet marathon last week because I decided to, because I wanted to do it, because I value the arts so much and they're hurting right now.
Yeah.
And I value community so much. And the arts community has been my backbone since I was born. And so this was something that felt like a greater values call to me than make money, have consistent income. And so it's very easy for me to become distractible from things that I know are important by things that pull on my heart, that feel important in the moment.
This actually exposes, I think, what should be a slight tweak with the pact that you made. So a pact, the reason pacts come last is that it's the last resort. It's the firewall to prevent you from getting distracted. But the pact you make should only be around how you spend your time. Because where people get into trouble is when they have a goal that is not 100% in their control the way time is. So the goal shouldn't be, I need to raise this much money, or I need to have this much reoccurring revenue, or this many customers, because that's not in your control.
Right.
The goal should be, if I don't work on this thing for as long as I say I will, that's when the pact kicks in.
Well, that's interesting. So I could do it like, I will spend 5 minutes a day, or I will spend this 1 hour every day working towards this, and then it would be done by now.
Right.
You're right.
So for me, for example, it was the burn or burn technique I talk about in the book is a price pack. Where
oh gosh, that gave me such anxiety to hear. Like I'm itching now, like thinking about it. You should tell people what you're talking about.
Sure. So the burn or burn technique works like this. So as I mentioned earlier, I was clinically obese, so I've always hated exercise. I'd have friends who said, "Oh, I get the runner's high and I love exercise." I have no idea what they're talking about. Like exercise has never been fun for me.
It's the worst.
Yeah, it's the worst. But I know it's important. It's one of my values to take care of my physical health. And so here's what I did. After I dealt with the other stuff, right? After the internal triggers, after the making time for traction, it's on my calendar. After I hacked back the external triggers, I did the other stuff first. Don't skip those steps. Those are very important. This comes last. Then what I did, I entered into a price pact. A price pact is when there's some kind of financial disincentive for when you get distracted. Now, how does this work? I made a pact with myself that I was going to do something physical 6 days a week. Okay. That could be do push-ups for 15 minutes. It could be take a walk outside. It could be, go to the gym. It could be lift some weights. I've got to do something in that time block that I said I'm going to do it in. Okay. Now, in my closet, there's a calendar, and on that calendar is taped a crisp $100 bill to today's date. Now, above that calendar, there's a shelf, and on that shelf, there's a Bic lighter.
I'm already feeling on LinkedIn Live.
That here's what the choice to make. It's called burn or burn. I can either burn the calories or burn the $100 bill.
Literally burn it.
Well, here's the thing.
Lighter.
I've never burned it. Because you know why? I do the goddamn
burn. Yeah.
I go on a walk, right? So I made the thing that needs to get done easy enough that I really have no excuse other than I'm being lazy.
Because you made it 15 minutes, right?
Exactly.
For me, it's never like I'm being lazy. So it's that I don't look down on myself for doing things that are in alignment with my values. And I wish I did, I wish I had that ability to switch values. But what I've learned, especially because I'm UMAP certified, and UMAP goes through your natural strengths, your personal values, your transferable skills that you like using, which are called your motivated skills, and your personality. So I have all this self-awareness, and I know that I'm a values-driven person. I live in relational and influencing themes, not in executing themes in my strengths. So I'm not a doer of stuff. I'm not even a really great delegator of stuff. I end up doing stuff myself because I'm not a delegator of stuff. But what I need to do is live in these influencing and relating themed strengths to be superpowered. But I will always do any action in service of a value. And so I have to be honest with myself about what those values are. And when I set myself goals, like do this thing that will make me money, it's never going to be the money that drives me. It has to be those other things: love and connection, community, creativity. And if those values aren't activated, I'm not taking the action. So when I create my pacts, I should make sure that I'm in a group that I feel like I'm nourishing, I'm fueling, where I can also be a leader in that group, because leadership is a value. So infusing your own personal values into these commitments that we make.
This is where there's a pact there's three types of pacts: effort pacts, price pacts, and identity
pacts.
And this is where identity pacts are so powerful, because when you call yourself something, when you describe yourself as a noun, that you are a vegetarian or a Christian or a Democrat or Indistractable,
right?
That becomes an identity that keeps you consistent with your values. Even if the value is, I said I'm going to do it, so I'm going to do it because I'm indistractable. So just like a vegetarian doesn't wake up in the morning and says, should I have some bacon for breakfast? No, vegetarians don't ask themselves that because they've already decided in advance, I am a vegetarian. That's is
how
what
I know I'm not one. Right.
What's that?
That's how I know I'm not one. Almost my second or third thought.
You certainly have some identities that you can use to leverage that. And so this is what becoming indistractable is.
Community leader.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So one of the best things you can do, by the way, to become indistractable yourself is to teach others how to become indistractable, right? So this is why
Yes,
religion. This is
I
where I
remember
drew
that.
this research from, that, religions have people who proselytize. Why? Of course, it's to expand
Mhm.
the faithful, to increase the flock, but it's also for the psychology of the person who is proselytizing. That when you teach others, you become more likely to do what you are preaching, even if you're not perfect. That in
Yeah.
fact, you're more likely to do what you say you're going to do, simply for the fact that you are teaching others about that. So that's why the book is titled Indistractable. Indistractable sounds like indestructible, because this is the skill of the
Oh, I
century. This
love
is
that.
the
I hadn't
superpower.
made that connection, but it
Yeah,
does sound like that.
exactly. And so having that identity is something that can help you be consistent with the person you want to be, and help you ultimately live out those values.
So I am an intentional communicator. Like that's my identity. And it is because it's also what I do. I feel as I teach other people to become intentional communicators that I am holding myself to a much higher standard than I ever would be if I just said it on my own. So it's that I am an intentional communicator and that I teach others to be as well. And I have a game that I want to play with you called Verb Your Values. And at the end, you will make your own communication promise. So you had talked before about being like those people that you value, or like somebody that you want to be like someday, or aspiring to be the person that you want to become, and or become more like qualities you want to have. So I like thinking about this at the beginning of this game because we're calling our awareness to those we admire. Usually the things that we admire in others are our values. We admire them because we value them. We value those things in others. We want some version of creating that impact ourselves with our communication. So, Nir, who is someone that you admire in business? Any one person's name. I know you had mentioned Gretchen Rubin before. She could be a great example. It could be anybody.
So I always admired the work of Paul Graham, who's founder of Y Combinator, and he really inspired me to
Yeah.
start writing. He wrote a book called Hackers and Painters that I read, and it just blew my mind, because it was he turns over a lot of apple carts. He looks at things from first principles, and many times when you analyze things to their fundamental truths, you come to different conclusions from what most people believe. And so the book, as you read, is full of counterintuitive examples, and examples of what most people think is the case and turns out to be actually totally wrong. And I pay homage to Paul Graham for teaching me that. That's kind of the standard I hold myself to. That I remember when I read his book, I just blew my mind. What did
it make you feel when you were reading that book or receiving any communication from him, whether it's his social media messages or anything? What did his writing and his material, all of it, what did it make you feel?
It's going to sound nerdy, super nerdy, but it was kind of a mind orgasm.
I love a good mind orgasm. Yeah, that's fantastic. So stimulated maybe, or
Yeah.
uncovered, unlocked, exploded in some way.
That the best compliment for I think a social scientist is for someone to prove us wrong, right? If we have a theory and someone comes along and says, actually, it's not the way you think, it's the other way, that's awesome. We love that, right? We don't take that personally. That's a high compliment. And so I think, when it comes to somebody who can shake my beliefs and help me see the world differently, it's very liberating.
So you value that. Liberating is a great word. You feel liberated when your beliefs are shaken, or when you're challenged in some way.
Because it happens so rarely, and that's where real learning occurs. I mean, it's every time that happens, you realize, wait a minute, the way I was seeing the world wasn't accurate.
Right.
And so it doesn't happen very often in life, past in adulthood at least, that you get to see the world in a brand new way. And anybody who can do that is pretty
anybody
amazing.
who wants to see the entire world in a brand new way must read both of your books, Hooked and Indistractable.
Thank you.
And anything else that you've written or will ever write. And certainly they should watch this episode again, because there's some good stuff in here. So someone that you admire in your family, and this can be anybody. I happen to know that you have personal, good relationships with people in your family. And so that's why I'm asking this question. If somebody at home is playing along and you don't, think about your family of choice people who mean so much to you that they are in your very inner circle. So
Yeah.
who is someone in your family whom you admire?
And that's an easy one. So my wife is an amazing human being, and I feel lucky every single day that I met her. It would have been 23 years ago that we met. We've been married for 18 years, and we met 23 years ago. And I admire so much about her because she makes things look easy that I think are very difficult to do. And so that's definitely.
It might be difficult for you to do. Those things might be difficult for you to do and easy for her to do. I bet she finds certain things that you do difficult.
Could be, and that's probably why we're a good match. We're not alike in many ways, and I think that's probably our strength.
So when you think about the things that she does well, or the way that she talks to you or to your daughter or to other people, what about her communication? What does it make you feel?
She's very calming because she's incredibly patient, and she's incredibly self-aware, as well as very aware of. She's very sympathetic. She's very aware of other people's emotions, and that's something.
Are you sympathetic?
No, nowhere near as sympathetic as she is.
Okay. Well, but you do value it, which is interesting.
Very much, yeah. Because people are a mystery to me.
This is where we can transition into the awareness of your values. Well, you love to uncover, right? You love being uncovered, and you love to uncover. As a verb, that could be one of your values, to uncover, to excavate, to challenge, to confront. Like, these are things that are values of yours because you value that Paul did this to you, or that your wife calms and sympathizes and connects with you in that way. The things that you admire in other people and the way that they make you feel, these are the things that you value. And so what about a friend you admire?
I have a very good friend that I've known since I was 17 years old. We went to camp together, and it's one of these friends that no matter how long we haven't been together, every time we see each other, it's like we don't skip a beat. And so I don't think actually either of us have that great of a sense of humor, but together we can't stop laughing. And so that's something that we bring out in each other.
So cute. I'm thinking about you in camp, little Nir.
Yeah, that's about right.
Going between camp activities with your little buddy. So what does he make? Does he make you feel fun or funny, or what does he make you feel when he communicates with you?
Yeah, that's right. Fun, funny.
He makes you feel playful, fun, funny, cool. Yeah. And what about a company, a brand you admire? I usually talk about Snacks, Daniel Levitsky's company, with the little almonds and the bars. And I just think that they take such great care of their employees and Kind, Kind.
Oh, Kind.
Yeah, those snack bars.
Yeah.
I just think that they're amazing in their simplicity, in the ease with which they communicate their values, in their integrity and honesty, and how they treat their employees and customers, down to the ingredients that they put into their products. They are one of the most consistent brands that I know. So that's a company I admire. And so what about you?
That's a tough one because, companies are run by people, and people are fallible, right? People screw up. So that's tricky. I mean,
what company has consistent value that you admire?
So I know there's one value at one company that I really admire. Okay. I don't think they do everything right, but I think, so I did a lot of research in writing the book. I researched Slack, the group chat app. And I was really impressed by, one, it's this company that a lot of people blame for distracting them. And so that's why I paid them a visit. I wanted to go see, how do they manage it? Because nobody uses Slack more than Slack. They should be the most distracted people on earth. And that's not what I found. That in fact, at Slack, if you use Slack on nights and weekends, you are reprimanded. That is not what they do at Slack. You are not allowed to use Slack on nights and weekends, because when you walk into company headquarters in San Francisco, there's this huge pink neon sign. You can't miss it. It's in company HQ. It says in big neon letters, it says, "Work hard and go home."
Yeah, I
Work
love that.
hard
I remember hearing that
yeah.
from your book,
Yeah, there's a
Indistractable.
picture of it in the book, and you
Mhm.
know, that's not what you would expect to see at a hard-charging, publicly traded Silicon Valley company. And the reason it's
Yeah,
there is because Stuart Butterfield, who I admire very much, that is part of his value set. And everyone
right,
from Stuart on down has this belief that people do their best work when they can be indistractable, when they can do what they say they're
right.
going to do without distraction. And so I really admire that aspect of the company.
That's a great one. I remember hearing about that in the book and thinking that culture is something you must work at, especially if you're in a place where constant notifications and at tags are something that you tell other people to use in order to call, but it's about calling people's attention when it's important, specifically to them, within the confines of this group that they've agreed to be part of, in service of a value that they all share. So that is what Slack serves. It's what it's
Yeah.
supposed to do. It is
And it's about using the technology, not let the technology use you,
right,
right? So it's also about utilizing, look, in the wrong hands, a technology can be used for great harm, right?
right,
A hammer can build a home or it can smash someone in the head.
right.
So it's really about, at a crappy company culture, Slack can be horrible. But at a company with healthy company culture, it's wonderful.
So I'm going to call maybe some examples of verbs I'm hearing in things that you value. So I'm thinking about the freedom, and the focus as being two different parts of you. Like to focus, to liberate. That those might be two sides of you, and there's something about the way that your wife makes you feel, like to empathize or to connect in some way. Those could be your communication values. That when you talk to somebody, you can choose to liberate them or to uncover them. I think there's also something really fun in to play, and that can also fall under the liberate umbrella. Like to liberate. When you're with that friend, you are totally free to be your silliest selves and to liberate from these constraints of how you've been living so far. So, what do you think about that as a communication promise from you? That when you think about your communication partners, the people who are most important to you, if you're really being your true self, your intentional self, not just your instinctive self, which is what do I feel like saying or doing in this moment, but your intentional self, is it your promise to liberate, to focus, and to connect with the people that you care about?
Sounds great. Yeah. How can you say no to
Great.
that?
I don't know. Well, you can choose any verbs that you want, as you consider this. And then I hope that you'll message me back with what your final, and I'll send you this worksheet so that you can go through it on your own time and not on the spot. But thinking about the things that you value feeling, and then taking accountability for how you want to make other people feel with your communication. That is how I feel we say things better, when you
Excellent.
take those values and put them into action as you communicate with others. So you think about it, but the final game that we can play before I just ask you to share with people where they can find more about you is an acting game. It's taking these verbs, putting them on words that don't matter, and showing ourselves then and the audience the difference and what it feels like. So I'm going to give you a line, and then you're going to say that line to me with the intention to liberate me, or to connect with me, or to focus me. And this shows you in doing it that you are completely capable of setting your intentions to make somebody feel something. So the line that I've been using, which is just fun, is I brought you a taco. Doesn't really mean anything. You've not brought me a taco. You didn't know it was expected. So this is your line. I brought you a taco. So just give it to me now, just straight, without any intention. I brought you a taco.
I think I'm going to pass on this. I
Oh,
didn't
really?
know
Okay.
we were going to do this. I'm sorry.
Oh,
It's
okay.
kind of taken me out.
Totally
It's a
fine.
little bit from left field here, and I'm not super comfortable with it. But so
That's
maybe we can
totally
pass on
fine. That's totally. I'll do an example of it myself to model, and then when you are on your own time and you want to go through it, just to see, looking in the mirror, what does it feel like if I am communicating with this verb or with that one behind it? So just to model, I brought you a taco. With to connect, I might say, I brought you a taco. And if it is to focus, then I might go, I brought you a taco. And if it's to liberate, then it might be, I brought you a taco. So these are things that might come from me, the way I communicate. And everybody else using those verbs might sound very different. So you're absolutely under no pressure to do this on your own time. But if you do, I hope you'll let me know that, what it felt like for you to assign a verb to different parts of your communication. So moving into the last bit here, I know that you're in Mentor Box, or you did something with Mentor Box about persuasion. And would you just mention something, just explain what it was that you wanted to help people to do differently with their communication with what you put into that box?
Yeah, so it was a course we did around the book Indistractable. So it was an introduction, a short video course introducing the concepts in Indistractable.
Okay, cool. And that is something that is still available and that people can still buy?
I don't know, actually.
Oh, okay.
It's been over a year, so I'm not sure, actually.
Okay, so where should people go to find Indistractable, Hooked, anything else that you want them to find so that they can get more of you?
Yeah, so if you go to nirandfar.com, that's my blog. It's spelled N-I-R, like my first name, so nirandfar.com. And if you want to check out the book, it's called Indistractable: How to Control Your Attention and Choose Your Life.
Awesome. Thank you so much, and thank you for being here. I know that people can also follow you on LinkedIn and on Instagram and find you all over the place, and I hope that they do. Indistractable has definitely helped me to accomplish a lot more. Certainly during quarantine, having these new tools, the timing just really worked out that I have these tools for focus, for being indistractable, and for then being able to accomplish things that are way bigger than I ever thought I would be able to execute or on my own. So I really appreciate what I've learned from you, and I appreciate you being here.
Oh, thank you so much. That means a lot to me. Thank you. It's great being here. Appreciate you having me.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to end our broadcast, and bye, everyone.